I know that I say this about every episode that I do an interview with, but this one might be the one that hit home the most. I had the distinct pleasure of chatting with Amber de la Garza, the productivity specialist, who has more than a decade of experience helping small business owners maximize their profits, reduce their stress, and really make time for what matters most by improving their time management and elevating their productivity. The story on how she got to how many days she works in a week is mind-blowing. So I encourage you to listen as she uncovers what it takes to get there, and also what is the big O and the things that are broken down within that. And by the big O, we're talking about the word overwhelm. And it's such a broad word, but she pinpoints it to 3 distinct things that truly, truly made me think about what I am and who I am in my business. And Amber is a beautiful soul who is a sought-after coach, trainer, speaker, writer, right? She does all the things, and she's the host and has over 300 episodes on her podcast called the Small Business Straight Talk podcast. She also has created the Leverage Lab, and she shares her message on her podcast weekly, so tune into that, while talking straight talks both virtually and in person across the country for audiences that range from small business owners to associations to multinational corporations. Listen, we talk about it all, but really it's confronting the big unnecessary O's that wreak havoc on your business. We're going to give you strategies to reduce the overwhelm. We're going to talk about how to recognize when you're suffering from them, some actions to take, and some key questions to ask yourself to improve consistency and reduce your stress. Let's dive in. You are listening to That Big CEO Energy, where we talk all things business, life, marriage, and push you to a new edge of discovering what that big CEO energy means for you. Listen, I understand that we have barriers that we carry from when we were once employees, and those have impacted us as we continue to build our businesses. I'm here to walk alongside you and give you encouragement through interviews with friends and other women in business who have broken down those barriers and paved their own way. Tune in with me as we uncover some of the unconscious things that we do that keep us from building that big CEO energy we've always dreamed about. Let's dive in. Amber, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. It is so nice to meet you.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
Well, we're just going to dive in because that is what we are both here for. And our topic for today is we are going to confront the big O's. And I love that. The unnecessary O's that really wreak havoc on your business. And so my first opening question is, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started on this work. And then what are the big O's that show up in our businesses?
Yeah, thank you. I am a coach, a speaker, podcast host, and I talk all about productivity and time management for small business owners. And I've been doing this for 14 years. And prior to that, I was in corporate. And during my corporate experience, I was actually trained to be a business coach specifically for high-performing, successful real estate professionals. My degree is in real estate and business management. And I spent many years, I started in high school interning, went through college, worked all kinds of jobs in real estate to find out I hated selling real estate. And I loved the operational side. I liked the business side of it. I liked the business building side of it. And so that's the area that I pursued. And when I was coaching, we were a team of coaches that had these resources and strategies, and it was all about leveraging through building the team and systems. So leveraging through team and systems. And I would find this pattern and this repeat experience, repeat verbiage. And it was always like, I know I want this. I know I want to take my business to the next level. I'm so busy working in my business. I have no time to work on my business. I feel so overwhelmed. And it really stuck with me because these are highly successful sales professionals. They definitely are skilled. They had discipline. Like they really had already built something amazing. And I thought to myself, what if that was no longer in the way, like the roadblock between what they have and what they want is I never have enough time. Well, that seed was planted in like every good origin story, that seed, and then another one over about 8 years. In hindsight, makes complete sense, but while it was happening, made no sense, to which I had gotten pregnant and I had my son and I took all my maternity, all my vacation, and I was going to go back. I was going to climb the corporate ladder. I had a plan. I, enjoyed what I did, but I was changed. I was forever changed when I had my son. 3 weeks before I was supposed to go back, I went in and I said, yeah, I'm not coming back. Like, this is not going to work for me. My husband and I decided that I was going to stay home for the first 2 years for the first 2 years of his life. And I didn't really have a plan. That was the goal, was that I wasn't going to go back to the hours, the demand, that structure. I knew where I wanted to be. So he went in and I quit. And the COO of the company leaned over and said, good for you for choosing family over business. Mm-hmm. And then in the same breath said, so can we keep you on as a consultant? And I was like, what? Hold on. No, well, let me go back and talk to my husband because I was planning on just quitting. Thanks for the offer. And that's where that seeded again was doing consulting. I made way more money. I worked nap times, night times after he went to bed, dealt with none of the corporate crap or the politics, only got hired back to do the things I loved, which was operational systems, training, all of that. And then I moved quickly. By the time my son was 2 months old, I was incorporated to start this business. And that's the seed of it. Yeah. And then I was incorporated and I, had my LLC and such. I did consulting, but I actually didn't launch my business until a second birthday because that was my initial goal, was to be at home. And I knew as a new mom, I didn't have the capacity to have 2 babies at the very same time. Like I didn't want to divide my energy. So my business launched on his birthday, May 15th.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's tomorrow.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And I haven't looked back. And I just share that story to say, you never know what the future holds. And you just listen to one gut and one inkling and, pursue what you're passionate about, what you're good at. And I have built the business from that with multiple pivots, which is what we were talking about before we hit record, was the pivoting in business and how that works for us.
Yeah. Before we get into the big unnecessary O's, I just want to ask a small question. And it is, was there any point of pivoting and starting your business that you thought, I don't know if I'm going to make it?
Yeah.
Was there any doubt in your mind?
There wasn't a doubt that I would make it, but I didn't know what making it meant. So I was just too naive to know, I feel like my everyday, my normal routine is something that I could have never imagined the day that I quit or the day I started my business. So from working at home to my schedule, to the type of clients I work with, to how much I charge, literally, it was an evolution of expanding and growing, what I thought was possible for myself. So I would say, naively, it was small and then kept growing. And I think that as I believed, it grew. And then I believed and I saw evidence and it grew. Had I seen what I experienced today, I may have not thought I could have made it. Yeah. So again, as big as your dreams are, they can keep getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
I will say, because we were talking a little bit before we hit record, and I know that a lot of your listeners have probably come from corporate and they're starting a business. And the story that comes to mind is the first time I had to quote somebody a price. And I remember wanting to throw up in my car. And my only perspective of price was how much I was being paid an hour, salaried. And to say it, and now I couldn't even imagine that being an issue, but to know that it's going to hurt, it's going to feel uncomfortable. If you say it and then you say it again and then you say it a little bit more, it will get more comfortable. And I didn't just, day one have the confidence that I was going to build all this out and that I could charge what I charge. I think that grew with confidence, and it grew as my skill set got better and better. And I felt like I was providing more and more value. But that first few, this is what I charge. Coming from corporate, you only have to do that a couple times a year, maybe, when you ask for a raise. When you're a business owner, you're asking for what you consider your worth every single day, which is something you got to, mindset work on it and work through it.
Yeah, I think that's such a beautiful testament, too, of the things that we see on the internet, the prices that people charge. Those are humans behind those prices that you're clicking, yes, I want to buy those things. And there is some really strong internal work that had to be done to make sure that you are okay with the price that you're putting out into the world. And it's not just what we're worth, right? Or what we think a program is worth. It's much more deeper. And I think you said it best. It's understanding that it's not just a couple times a year. We have to look at these things day in and day out. And when you have to look at them every day, we can either make a choice to make that the easiest part of our job or make that the thing that holds us back.
Yeah.
And one of the conversations that I just had recently was my client couldn't get past the fact that she had to continually increase her prices because people were saying yes so easily that it wasn't even a second thought to them. And we had to strategically have this conversation of, if people are saying yes so darn easily, then that's just as much of a problem as it is the people that are saying, oop, no thanks, that's way too high, right?
Yeah.
So it's like finding the balance that's in the middle, but there's so much work that goes into that. So when we see prices on the internet, when we see things that come across our desk that we are considering to purchase, we have to understand that it's not just willy-nilly thrown on there. And people are like, oh, well, we're just going to try it and see if it works, right? And some of that is, but it's years behind the business of the mindset work that has taken place for that. So thank you for calling that out. That is super important for people to know. So,
Oh, I just want to share a little quick example of how I hacked my own brain, because mindset is everything. That if I was focusing on the dollar or how much I was going to charge, that did not feel good to me. So I switched it, and it was my job to build a wait list. That I was in demand so much that I had reached capacity and I was on a wait list. And I promised myself that every single time I was on a wait list, I would raise my prices. And then my job just became, how do you provide such exceptional service and value that you either have repeat clients, which a lot of my business is, referrals, which is a lot of what my business comes from, that if I was on wait list, that meant that I could raise my prices, because if someone said no, I'm good. Like I've already got it in the bag. And so it kind of took that off the table. And then the just focus was just be as good as you can be and provide as much value as you can provide. And me taking it off the dollar, but knowing that my value was worth X, and then work your butt off and hone your skill and provide value and then do it again and do it again, is how, I increased it over time consistently. And that's still my goal, is to push to a wait list every time. It helps with your income being not up and down. It helps with scarcity mindset. It just helps with a lot. And so that's how I've built my business out, is understanding what my capacity is, work from a wait list if at all possible consistently, and raise the prices where it makes sense.
So good. So what are the big O's?
Yeah. Well, the big O that I think most of us are most familiar with is probably overwhelm.
Oh, yes.
And I hear this a lot, probably a little biased. People come to me because they're overwhelmed, but honestly, it's a throwaway statement. Overwhelm is very general. When we say we're overwhelmed, it's the same as going to the doctor and looking at them and saying, I don't feel good. And then that's it. Like no other tips, no other symptoms, no other explanation. And it's, I just don't feel good. And how are they really going to be able to help you? They're going to have to get tests. They're going to have to ask you more questions, more symptoms. They're going to narrow it down. And if they're a really good doctor, far and few between, they're going to get to the root cause. And overwhelm is just a surface level symptom. And I think it's worth diving in and getting deeper into what is specifically creating that overwhelm. Because when we say we're overwhelmed and it stays general, then we truly do experience and feel overwhelm in all areas of our business that overflows to almost all areas of our life. And that's not a great feeling to feel consistently. Does not help our mindset. It does not promote growth or abundance or wanting to grow your business to the next level if your current state of your business is overwhelmed. So underneath that, the 3 O's that I like to talk about are going to be overcommitted, and we'll go into each of them, overexerted, and overworked. And that, just taking it one layer down, and we'll talk about each of those, will get you closer to what do you need to focus on? What is the gap? What is the actual pain point that if you focused on fixing will have this domino effect on helping you reduce overwhelm?
I love that. I think of, wow, you just hit the nail on the head. And I just think about like my husband, right? He's so kind and gracious. And when I say to him, I'm super overwhelmed, he has a knack for saying, and I'm sure other people experience this as well, well, what's got you overwhelmed? What can I help you with? And sometimes the hardest part is articulating what it is. Because
Absolutely.
it's family factors, it's business, right? Or a job if you're still there. It's kids, it's all the things. And we can name those and we can put them in buckets. But what's interesting is you're saying the level deeper is these 3 categories. And so how do we recognize when we are part of one of the categories and this is part of potentially going deeper? So
yeah. I mean, I think that's a good point. When we're overwhelmed, is an accumulation of what feels like a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take it back to the example of when you don't feel good. It's probably true that your back hurts and you're tired and you get a headache. It's not just one thing that's making you not feel good. But can you, with what resources you have, kind of uncover, well, what are still like the symptoms, right? So if your kids have sports activities and that's feels overwhelming, is it the sports activities that feel overwhelming, or that you've overcommitted in the business and you have no support in the business, therefore it's not possible to take time off to go to the sporting events? Because my guess is that most of us would rather be watching our kids play sports than putting out fires in the business. So it's not that the actual sporting event doesn't feel a bit overwhelming, but I would say keep asking, and why? And why? And if we can do that, we're offering ourselves the service of getting so specific that our brains can start solving for those challenges and those problems. When we keep things vague, we're unable to actually go into solution mode. We're just kind of in complain mode, and we all do it. So there's no judgment. I mean, I did it last night. Same thing. My husband said, okay, what can I specifically help you with? Because I just like went into the living room and said, I got to do this, this, and this. And then I leave town and then I come back and then I'm leaving town again. And it was that kind of frantic energy. And as soon as he said that, like the example you gave, I thought, No, I get to go to Knott's Berry Farm with my son. He's in the 8th grade. I get to go on a girls' trip this weekend. What's really stressing me out here? And I had to get back to it. Okay, go back to my list. Is it possible it can all get done? Yes, it can. Okay, babe, actually, can you help with dinner tonight? I'm going to go upstairs and pack. Like, that's all it kind of took to shift. So there are those times, but I'm talking that consistent, chronic overwhelm. There's usually a much deeper root issue. So let's just talk about overcommitted first, I guess.
Yes.
So in business, and I think we all can do this at every stage of our business. It doesn't matter what stage. But I think that when we're newer in business, we sometimes tend to overcommit because we're not sure. Everything looks like an opportunity. We're not quite sure what works, so we're trying everything, meaning someone invites you to a networking event, invites you to a mastermind event, invites you to do a marketing, and then you're speaking. Like, I'm just giving examples. You say yes to interviews. And so when you're saying yes to everything, you in fact are often saying no to yourself and your own boundaries and not being really clear. And what I find is that when we're first starting out in our business, while that's probably tends to be more needed or necessary to kind of figure out what works and doesn't work in the business, the harm that we're doing is creating those habits that then carry on past the need in the business to, I just say yes to all the things. So being overcommitted can be saying yes to all the things. It could be saying yes to too many clients, not understanding as a service provider, which a service provider to me is anyone where your skill set is the thing that's being sold. Could be everything from therapist to interior designer, architect, you name it, coach. So you're the value that's being sold is, do you understand what your capacity is? Now, I reverse engineered it, and you heard me share that example of, well, how does someone get a wait list? Well, the only way you get a wait list is understanding what your capacity is and holding those boundaries. Because if not, money's knocking on your door and you're going to say yes, yes, yes. But I wasn't willing to say yes, yes, yes to the expense of my own balance in my life or, picking my son up after school. And so I started really clear with what is the container of work that I have, capacity, and then setting those boundaries so that I didn't feel overcommitted.
Yeah. And I think overcommitted is interesting, especially for me. Like when I reflect back on starting my business, right? I still had a little bit of that scarcity mindset of I've got to make, because now we're on the hook for all the taxes, right? We're on the hook for all the things. And I don't think people realize that when you say you want to make X amount of dollars throughout the month, that actually means that you need to make Y amount of dollars to be able to feel comfortable with whatever you're making, right? And that was something that wasn't told to me. So so when I start in business, I'm like, okay, great. I have to make X, Y, Z. And it became this rat race of, oh, she needs services? Yes. He needs services? Absolutely. Because I had a threshold that I had to make. Two things I learned out of that were I wasn't charging enough. And I didn't know what it was that I was actually doing inside of my business. I wasn't clear enough with the services that I was providing. And so you're right. We do get in this rat race of yep. And then your family life starts to wave their hands in the air and say, what about us? What about those things? And then we get caught up like every other woman probably of, I don't know how I'm going to do it all. And the reality is you can't. You simply cannot, right? And I love this perspective of first going back to your business and saying, where am I actually overcommitting here? Because I don't have enough commitment for the things that I want to be doing. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you talk about that with your audience about gross and net and take home. When I work with my clients on our first onboarding, I'm asking those questions. And sometimes the goal of what your take home is the first time they've been asked that.
Yes.
And that's the online hustle. They're like, oh, 6K or, 6 figures, 10K months, like just throwing these numbers out. And honestly, if you're running a business that is not efficient, the business model is not really working on a profitability level, you're probably working really, really hard and still either just reinvesting the money or there's not a net to take home because the business is expenses and all of that is too much. I would say I know you didn't ask me this, but I get asked often what my favorite business book is. And my favorite business book that has had the biggest impact because it was mindset and strategy together was Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. And I read that book. I implemented it. And the first year we implemented it, go check it out, anybody that wants to, I was able to look at my financials in a whole different way. That profit first means the business should be serving you, right? You should be making a profit. And that you have different accounts. You have operations, you have owner's pay, you have taxes, you have an actual profit account. And at the end of the first year, I was so excited to do taxes because I had all the money saved up. So I do my taxes and realize we have a lot of money left over saved by implementing Profit First. And I did an owner's draw and told my husband, pay off your truck. And that was the first year that really switched. And that goes back to our earlier conversation about knowing your worth and understanding the numbers. And everything, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but all of that has everything to do with time management and productivity.
Yeah.
Because if your cash flow is inconsistent or your business isn't profitable, it is near impossible to hold a schedule, no matter how intent you are about it. You'll sacrifice it because you're in growth mode, because you want to create something, because you want to build something. And oftentimes we've left a salary and we do need to replace that salary to just maintain in our households. And so that becomes the number one priority over balance, work-life balance. So if we can get that figured out, where it's consistent cash flows, profitability, then we're much more likely to be able to not overcommit, not to overwork, not to overexert yourself, because that temptation isn't always lingering.
I agree. Yeah. What's the next one? Give us the next one.
So the next one is overexerted. And look, the overcommitted means you said yes to all the things and there's more on your plate than you can possibly handle. Overexerted means, are you taking breaks? Are you nourishing your body? Are you working through your lunch? Are you truly prioritizing your own body and energy? Because the business needs it. I actually watched one of your Instagram posts. It was a little video right before we came on, and it was all about mindset. And I couldn't agree more. You were like, mindset is the one thing you must fight for. And this is a mindset game. And I would say number two, if not that they go back and forth, is your own physical health and energy. Because I know that when my energy and health isn't great, it's a fight to keep my mindset strong. But if my mindset's not strong, I won't advocate to keep my body and my mind healthy. So I think they go hand in hand. And the way I like to think of this is your business deserves the best of you. Plain and simple. That's really all your business needs is the best of you. And that often means good energy, good health. And to get there does not mean to be, quote unquote, more productive working through breaks, neglecting time off on the weekends, not fueling your body.
Yeah. I mean, full disclosure, I had to have a reality check with myself, even at the top of 2024, where I so longed to take Fridays off, right? Completely off of my business, not a CEO moment, not a working on my business. I just wanted to be off, have a 3-day weekend. It wasn't until last month that I fully committed to what would it look like if I just spent the next 3 months doing exactly that. And I'm telling you, in the 5 weeks that I have been committed to that, with a little variation of I need to do this, but no more than an hour, right?
Yeah.
I feel better. I feel whole. I feel, and I call them creating like little holy habits, where it's like, what are the sacred things that are non-negotiable? And it's not just about checking another box, right? It's not like, oh, I'm writing down in my planner that I'm going to the gym, and so I have to go to the gym so I can check that little box. It's I get to go to the gym or go for a walk or walk the dogs during lunch or whatever that is, so that I'm showing up in the way that I want to show up in my business, not, oh, I've got to get up at 5 a.m. Look, I am not getting up at 5 a.m. ever again in my life unless it's for a flight. That's just what it is, right? So it's like you get to make those decisions in your business, but you also are sacrificing in other areas. So what are the areas that you're choosing, particularly in your life, to not be overexerted? Can you share some of the little things that you do?
Well, currently, so since actually it's been a year, so April 9th of 2023, I have been a 3-day work week.
Wow.
And it was a 4.5 day work week, and then out of necessity. So my elderly aunt got sick on Easter last year. She ended up being in the hospital. I had to move her out of her home. Like, there was just a ton of things that were unexpected, that were not planned for, that I had to take over. And I knew that, well, I'll just call it what it is. She was a hoarder. So we had a 3,000 square foot house that had to be cleaned out.
Oh my goodness.
So she was moving into assisted living, and I needed to take the lead of being over her estate. And so why I say that is to talk about overexerted. So on the weekends, because my husband would help, we would be there cleaning out or supervising and construction and like all of the things. And I knew that my body needed rest. So I immediately looked at my schedule and said, I'm going to a 3-day work week because I need a day of rest. I need a day of, Costco, Sam's Club, laundry, family stuff. And then I need 2 days to work on her stuff and my business. And what I wasn't willing to do is give up my weekends to handle what absolutely needed to be handled, which it's a blessing that I had the ability to do so, but not at the expense of not taking a break, because I wouldn't have been showing up anywhere my best. I would have felt bitter, right? And so that I cut down. Well, that lasted until, we didn't sell the house till January. So it was a long road, and I never went back, and I probably won't go back. So I work from 8:30 to 3 days a week now. And by having that container, both out of necessity, plus that's just where my business was at, that I was able to do this, was that I just leveraged my team at a whole nother level. It made me solve problems in a different way. Once you start contracting your availability, it makes you start looking at things differently and solving challenges in a different way. Because if you have time, so there's something called Parkinson's Law. Parkinson's Law states that tasks will expand to the amount of time given. So if I had 5 days, I would have filled up 5 days. If I had 6, I would have done 6. Well, I have 3. But my 3 work days are literally back to back, other than lunch. I also take an hour lunch in there. But it's back to back meetings. Everything is scheduled weeks and weeks in advance. And I just make the very most of those 3 days with client work, interviews, team meetings, you name it. They're run really efficiently, but I do it in 3 days.
That's amazing. Wow. Good for you. Mental note for myself moving forward.
But I need this disclosure. Remember, I opened this up and said I've been in business for 14 years. Yes. Like, that was not day one. That wasn't before. My team has been with me for years, that they're not trained, that they're not supported. Like, those are things that you're constantly investing in and you're building over time that then makes reality different. And so don't judge where I'm at to where you're at. And also, maybe you can see that vision for yourself. Because like I also said earlier, was I couldn't even see what my life would look like now, which is normal. And maybe just hearing someone say, like, you can do it. It's totally possible.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. What is our third one?
All right. Overworked. And this has a few different meanings to it, but overworked could mean that you are doing all the things and wearing all the hats in your business, it could mean that you're not charging enough. Funny enough that we were talking about that earlier, right? Meaning because you have to work with more clients to make the same amount of money if you're not charging appropriately. Overworked could be like simply working after hours, and we kind of touched on that on overcommitted, but that's the reason is overcommitted. There's other reasons why you might be overworked and working too many hours in the business. And understanding that building a business doesn't need to feel like this. Like, you probably left something that didn't feel great. You knew that you were meant for more, and we fled the schedule and structure. But that's actually what we need. We just get to create that structure and that schedule. So what does overworked mean? It's different for everybody. But anytime we're working more hours than we want to or can by creating work-life balance. So I'll give another example. When my son was younger, so he's 14 now. When my son was younger, there's just like more stuff, right? There's after school activities. There seemed to be like more laundry and everything. And I was in the midst of growing my business. And in that season, I was more valuable in the business, meaning time trade. But I also wanted to make sure I wasn't spending my weekends doing all that stuff. So at that season, I bumped my take-home pay to be able to pay for a fairy godmother, someone that was in the home that came in 15 hours a week, that helped pick him up, take him to, jujitsu, prep dinner, did laundry. And I say that because overworked isn't about the hours. Like, I made sure I had support on the home front because of the hours I needed to put in the business to build it. And just understanding that at that point, the best use of my time was not the laundry and the grocery shopping, but rather building the business. So that on the weekends was quality time with the boys. That at dinner, I wasn't stressed about dinner. I was able to enjoy dinner with my boys, my husband and son. So overworked looks different. You just have to ask yourself, what does that look like in this season? Where do I feel overworked? How can I get support? And it might not always be just in the business. We've been talking a lot about my journey as a business owner and pay. My very first goal in business was to be able to pay a housekeeper. Like, we're talking a few $100s a month. Can I bring home a few $100s a month that it didn't affect the home money to justify a housekeeper? And then it became, okay, I need more days of daycare. Okay, can the business justify, by bringing home more money, additional days of daycare? And then it just kept growing to where we don't talk in support. We talk in dollars into the home. But again, evolution, it looks different. And I started with like, can I find like $400 this month extra to help pay for a housekeeper? Can I, and then doing that and then building upon it.
Yeah. I also want to add, in the category of overworked, it also includes responding to DMs when you are already off your clock, and responding to clients because you have your email on your phone. I'm just going to say it out loud. Just going to say it out loud. More so probably saying it to myself than others, but that's true, right? We don't even realize the mental taxing load that we're putting on ourselves by just simply answering a message, because then it's, now you're distracted in your phone and you're not committed to whoever is around you, right? That was a hard lesson for me to learn, to the point where my husband very lovingly, again, because we all know my husband is so lovely, came to me and said, "Hi, I don't know if you see me over here, but you're always in your phone and you're always answering messages." And that hit me really hard because I didn't want to disappoint him. And I didn't want him to think that I was prioritizing my whole entire business, which does mean those little things, right? Over spending quality time with him. And so for me, that was just a clue of like, okay, these small things also fit into the category of business hours, right?
Absolutely.
And if somebody doesn't, adhere to the boundaries, it's like, well, then we have to have a conversation of, is this person right for your business?
Yeah.
I think sometimes we get, again, back to the scarcity mindset of what's going to happen if I have to put in boundaries. Are those people going to appreciate those? We all do. You just said it yourself. We all thrive on boundaries and structure. So what is the difference between you running your own business than them calling a brick and mortar business at 6 p.m. knowing it's closed? Right? There's no difference.
That's exactly right. But the brick and mortar business clearly says on their door they're closed. It clearly says maybe on the answering machine they're not available. We'll answer the next day. So is that what you need to really declare and own? And it looks different in every business, but my team knows I'm not available after 3. My clients know I'm not taking appointments after 3. Like, that's a hard boundary. And can you hold that boundary? I wanted to give an example. One thing that we always start with is doing a time audit with my clients where they're tracking their time. And it's incredibly important, not just because it can tell us a lot, but it also bridges the gap between the way we feel about time and what's actually happening. So I'll have clients that say, I think I'm working like 60 or 65 hours a week or 50 hours a week. And then we track their time and it's nowhere near close to that. So we start looking into, well, why does it feel that way? Because our perception is our reality, right? Whether the data said it or not. And the reality often is what you're saying is that they're always on. They're always on call. They're on their DMs. They're on their email. And so there would be, moments, or it'd be 5 minutes, or it's 10 minutes. But because it's sprinkled everywhere, you might as well say, oh, I worked an hour. And then I worked all night, or I'm working every night. Yeah. And then it just starts mushroom where it gets bigger and bigger, but it's not based in actual data reality. Well, if we don't want that perception and how we feel, how do we pull that back? Just like you said, the boundaries. What are my work hours? What am I willing to be available? What is my return policy of like emails? Is it 24 hours? Am I turning DMs around? And one last thing on that is most of the time it's happening after hours because we're quote unquote not working or don't want to work, because we haven't created the time in the schedule during work hours to respond to those emails and those DMs. So if that's important to you, maybe that's part of your morning business routine is checking all DMs and, processing your emails and then doing it again before you close out at the end of the day. If it doesn't have time and space in your schedule, it will fall around the outsides, weekends and nights, and et cetera.
Yeah. How do we even begin to pull back the onion layer to even assess what it is going on? And I want to add, without feeling shame, because I think that, we can put it down on paper of like, yeah, that's a pain point and that's an area where I need to improve. And yep, I can recognize where, some things are falling through the cracks there, but there's also an added layer of shame, right? So how do we recognize when we're suffering from these 3 things of overwhelm?
Oh, wow, that's such a great question. I'm so glad that you are asking that and just representing your audience. There is no intent around shame for this. And there is, we have the tendency to judge it, right? So I'm not there. And how does she have a 4-day work week? And how does she have a 3-day work week? And, the judging between where somebody else is and where you're at. I'm going to tell you, after, again, almost 14 years, I've never met an unmessy business. Everybody has their thing, and you are learning and you are figuring out what works for you, what works for your business. And it's a work in progress. And a work in progress means you're still showing up and you're also making progress. And if we stay in that judgment or that shame, it does not promote solutions or being solution-minded, and it's not going to promote consistently taking action. And those are the 2 things that would best serve you to get you, quote unquote, out of the current situation. It is never, in my opinion, going to be drastic changes. So with my client, if I made these drastic overhaul changes of like, wave a magic wand, you're at a 4-day work week, that would create chaos. It could affect profitability. It's going to create other issues and fires. So we have to identify, okay, so why is there a gap between what I want and where I'm at? And if I can identify that gap, then your job is to just solve for that gap and then go to the next one and the next one. And as you reclaim time, my last advice here is don't think all or nothing. You heard Callie say she didn't go to a 4-day work week right away. She went to a 4.5, and then it came to an hour, and then she'll get to 4 days. To me, that is exactly what I would have recommended my clients, because you're stress testing the business. You're trying to figure out what's going to break if Callie takes off on Fridays. And if something breaks or is not taken care of, that's what you start plugging the holes, quote unquote, in the boat, right? You start solving for those things. So it's always small, consistent changes over time, with the goal being your ideal work-life balance. And in the pursuit of this work-life balance, you're going to build a healthier and more profitable business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are some really direct questions that we can ask ourselves in terms of when we see the gap, right? And where we recognize that is an area. Are there specific questions that you have for yourself as business owners that we can get to the root and get to there fast?
So there's usually going to be, the answer is no. If the question is get to the root and get to it fast, there's not always a fast, direct route. Okay.
Thank you for saying that out loud. Okay. That's exactly where I was going with that, because I'm like,
I was getting ready to answer you in a non-answer way. And then I'm like, okay,
let me know. Right? There's going to be somebody that's like, yeah, but how do I do it? And how do I do it fast? And the correct answer is you don't.
Yep.
You don't.
Yeah.
She just said it best, where it was like, if you do, like you're done like the Titanic. Like that went fast and it hit hard. So I think it's really high time, specifically for those that are listening, that there are, yes, actions that you can take to prevent this sabotage of the profits and wellness that you have in your business. But it doesn't come with just asking more questions, right? Yeah. I think the big question is what's happening? And then you solve for A.
Yeah.
We're always solving for A. How do we solve for A?
I'm going to give you, as we close out, I'm going to give you this list. I actually was just recording an episode before you and I recorded a solo episode on my own podcast. And this gap that we're talking about can be various things. That's where it's like, I can't give you a one quick answer. I can't tell you it's going to be simple, but it's going to be worth it. And the reason there's a gap between your ideal schedule and where you're at, I'm going to just list these really quick to give our audience like a little example. It's going to be, we talked about, is time management and productivity. If you don't have enough time, or you're not being selective with what you're focusing your time on high value activities, there's going to be a gap. Operational efficiency, business systems, workflow. If your business is fundamentally running inefficiently, the business owner is always going to show up and fill the gaps. It's your baby. You're going to make it successful. We talked about profitability and cash flow. If those two things are not stabilized, I don't care what your intent is. I don't care what ideal schedule you have. You will compromise that for the next client to say yes, to be available. It really flips things, because that is so important to the survival of the business. Meaning, if it's not profitable, at some point, you're going to have to close shop. So we really sacrifice a lot for that. So getting that in check, which is pricing, all of the things, but also leads to business strategy and business model. And this is one that I don't think a lot of people recognize has everything to do with, a successful business where you feel work-life balance, is that the model in which you are serving your business, so the offering, how your team is set up, etc., have contribute to that gap. Boundaries, calendar management, so overcommitting, not having white space, building and leading your team. Okay. This is huge. You may have a team, but are you leading them? Are you supporting them? Do you have the right people in the right places? Are you still filling too many gaps and wearing too many hats? If that's the case, chances are you're not getting that done in your ideal work week. And then lastly is self-leadership and self-discipline. So we could have all of that other stuff working. We could have this ideal block schedule. And at the end of the day, if you can't lead yourself and have self-discipline to do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it and honor these boundaries with yourself, then you're not going to get to where you want to be. So really working on how are you showing up for yourself so that you can show up better for the people you love and your business. So those are just a few of them. I actually, so crazy enough, was just working on an episode on a similar topic.
I love it. I love it. And I think the one thing that I would add is for the self-leadership and self-discipline is, our businesses become our babies and they become like our best friends, right? And it's if our best friend came to us and needed something, we would, at the drop of a hat, throw everything away to go and rush to that person.
Yeah.
So why on earth do we think that it's okay not to do the same thing for our business? And what I mean by that is if our business is craving us to have a healthy schedule and have healthy boundaries and have a 4-day work week, then why are we sacrificing everything else to not give it that, right?
Right.
So good. So good. Amber, you are a gem in and of your own right.
Thank you so much.
It. Where can people find you across the internet?
Yeah, so wherever you're listening to this episode, I also have a podcast called Small Business Straight Talk. You can find out more over on my website, amberdelagarza.com. And we have a short 3-minute quiz that will uncover what's most challenging you to take your business to the next level. And then you'll get a curated playlist of that podcast with specific episodes that address those challenges. So it's a great first step to help guide, okay, so where's my challenge and what should I be focusing on? And you can get that over at amberdelagarza.com/quiz. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. It was such a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you heard something that helped you, I would love it if you would leave a review and share it with your friends. This helps more people just like you become inspired to move the needle of their big CEO energy into a positive direction. If you would like to learn more about how I can help you streamline and position your business for growth or lead your business as a CEO, feel free to jump into the show notes with all of the links to find me. And don't forget to head over to Instagram so we can be pals.